Hello, YouTubers. Joe Kersey here on the 14th of October 2013 around 2 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern Time. Now, this is a product called Cowboy Caviar. And I guess it's made by an outfit out of Massachusetts there, Menino Brothers. Now, Paul brought this home from the hotel yesterday. It was left over from one of these meetings that they'd had catered. You know, the company holding the meeting had it catered in. And let me show you this stuff. This is pretty daggone good stuff. You've got whole sorts of, beans and corn and onions and peppers and stuff. And all in this nice kind of sort of oil vinegary mix, and that's as good as anything. Oh, I spilled a little crumb here. Very nice. First food I've had all day. Well, perhaps the second food I've had all day. But he check out these dirty dishes. I'm going to have to get to work on those sometimes. Well, more of that anon. Well, as I was saying, that's a very good product. And I don't know if you guys can find that. I would highly recommend it. Of course, you can make it yourself. Just get a mix of, corn and various beans and onions and peppers and cook them up and chop them up and put them in some sort of oil and vinegar, and it's great. Probably cheaper than whatever this stuff cost. I have no idea what it cost. I bet the participants in the meeting didn't know either. Well, except for maybe one who had arranged the meeting. It's catered. I'm going to have to check something now. Hang on. Well, that phone call turned out to be a wrong number. Now, we don't get very many of those anymore, They get put off by my answering machine message in any case. So that's how they know almost immediately it's a wrong number. Well, in any case, before I got sidetracked, make your own Cowboy Caviar. Good stuff. Well, Paul brought that home, as I said, and that box I showed you was full. And, I said, well, what is that? And he said, well, here. And so I stood there over the sink and ate the whole almost the whole daggone thing last night. Man, that was good. Well, I'm on the verge of becoming sidetracked. Never a good thing. Now, as I had alluded to the other day, I have a list of things that I want to talk to you about, but as again I said, that may be for winter. But I was watching some YouTube stuff today. I got up and read the Wall Street Journal online and did some email, the usual thing. And then I did some YouTube-y stuff, and there's these two guys down in Charleston, South Carolina. Now, they're originally from the north, but for whatever reason, after they got out of their initial blast of education, they moved down to Charleston, South Carolina. And they're doing some various things down there. I think one of them's trying to go do some school, and the other one's sort of thinking about doing school, but doing something in art and so forth. Well, in any case, they were doing one of these videos where they show you their day, and that's always fun to see how other people live. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I got involved in this YouTube stuff, because I like to see how other people live, and hear about what people do, and so they were driving through this area well, presumably around Charleston, and so they drove through it. They said, well, this is kind of the low rent area, and it's kind of a low life area, and it's not the best area in town. And so I knew immediately where they were. They were in North Charleston. Now, I'll tell you, it's been, well, this was a very recent view of North Charleston. It didn't look too bad at all to me, but when I was there in 1986, or was it 87? Well, 87, I think. And it was, this was kind of a low rent area. What had happened was I had become acquainted with a fellow that had he was a piano technician, and I became acquainted with him through a friend of mine who had moved from Columbus to Charlotte, North Carolina, and he and his then girlfriend, well, actually I think they were married then. He and his then wife had moved to Charlotte. She was an aspiring opera singer, and she was taking some additional vocal training there. She had gone to Indiana, and actually she was doing some professional singing as well, and he was down there with her. Obviously they were married, and well, I guess not so much obviously anymore. I mean, people have some very cosmopolitan people have very split marriages. Well, not so much them, but when this buddy of mine was down there, he somehow became acquainted with this fellow who had the piano. Well, he was a piano technician. He also had a workshop where he rebuilt pianos and restored pianos and things like that. And so Paul and I'd go down there to visit them, and this guy came over one night, and it's one of those things where sometimes you meet somebody you can just fall into conversation with and talk for hours. This guy and I sat in this man's living room, my friend's living room, from about 3:30 in the afternoon till about 12:30, after midnight. Essentially, neither one of us stopped telling each other stories. And it was great, so after that, one thing led to another, and one thing led to another, that he had decided to come up to Columbus for a while and rebuild these player pianos, because he specialized. His specialty was doing player piano rebuilds, and he wanted to get going in a thing where you'd have player pianos in bars, and you could stick a quarter in there and get a song, on the piano roll, select your song on the piano roll. And well, at that time I was a actively practicing physician with too much money and too little sense. So I said, well, come on up and and try this out. We'll see how it goes. And indeed, he did. He'd been having some personal problems, and he's well, how there's always some personal problems in somebody's life, and well, this is how you live and learn. Education's very expensive sometimes, and so anyway. But to get back to the Charleston thing, he decided that he really wanted to have this friend of his come up and help him, and so we went down and picked up this fella in Charleston that was his friend, and then the friend said that, well, we really needed to have, the friend's brother along as well. So we went down to North Charleston, South Carolina to pick up the brother. Now the brother was living in one half of a duplex house trailer. Now, we're talking about one half of a 14 feet? Yeah, 14 by 70 foot house trailer, which is the standard size. So it'll be a 35 by 14 foot area. And so now, of course, this piano fella had brought along his girlfriend. So we have, me, this piano fella, his girlfriend, his friend, and then now we're down in Charleston at this duplex house trailer, half of a duplex house trailer. Well, it's like there's no room in the inn for Joe, which is just as fun, just as well, actually, and because I didn't necessarily want to know what's going on in there, and so I was going to sleep in the back of the truck. I had a cap on the back of the truck. I said it was warm. I mean, it was October. It's in South Carolina. It's warm. You can sleep in the truck without, I had blankets and a sleeping bag, but So Johnny, the friend's brother, at whose place we were, outside of whose place we were parked, he says, well, if you're going to sleep out there, we need to talk to some people. And so he takes me around the neighborhood. He takes me into the corner carryouts. He introduces me to some people on the street or road, There weren't a lot of sidewalks down there. And said that, I was okay. And that I was going to be sleeping in the back of my truck, and they were not to disturb me. Well, it was fine. I mean, it turns out I wasn't disturbed at all. Not at all. Now, I had brought some wherewithal with me that, should I have been disturbed, I could have handled it. But still, it's an interesting little side of life that, those of us in from a more middle classy background and so forth, don't necessarily get to see too much of every now and again. You don't hear too much about that in polls, do you? I bet the PBS guys aren't out talking to a lot of these guys, are they? So that YouTube, those two YouTube guys, driving around in North Charleston brought that all back to me. I will say, we took a number of extended trips with these guys. Paul and I did too. I mean, Paul went on. We had a trip down to Fontana Lake. We left April 4th, 1987. Now, the night before we left, there was 12 inches of heavy wet snow fell, and so getting the truck with the boat out the driveway was a bit of an adventure, but we got it out, and we drove through kind of an ice storm on the way through I-40 over, outside of Knoxville, going over, into North Carolina to Fontana Lake. It's on the Tennessee River, and Tennessee River system, anyway. And we spent a week camping down there. That was fun. A skunk sprayed one of the dogs, not mine, not my dog. Sprayed the other guy's dog. Yeah, so that was, interesting. Anyway, so we've done some stuff. Now I think so. This North Charleston trip that happened fall of 1986. So that was. Well, that's about it. I'm going to show you a little of the maple leaves here out in the end of the dog yard here. Yeah, we'll let you have a look at the yellows and the oranges and all. I don't know how good that's going to show up, but that's happened just pretty much since last night. Alrighty now, bye-bye, YouTubers.